What has your partner's workplace done that made you so mad you went in and started threatening their boss? My wife, an ICU nurse of 17 years, came home extremely tipsy and beeline straight for our back garden. I smelt smoke, and when I went to check on her, I saw that she was burning her scrubs while sitting on the ground, violently sobbing. She had even burned her nursing school mementos that were worth gold to her. It took me almost 2 hours of gently holding her and asking what happened until she finally opened up. Last night at 4 a.m., the biggest emergency she had ever dealt with happened. 3 patients started coding red at once. She immediately ran to the administrator's office begging him to get 2 more nurses to help her out. But the thing was, these nurses were working on opposite wings, and our hospital was so cheap they never gave us communication devices. Getting nurses would mean the administrator himself would have to run and track them down, and clearly he wasn't bothered to do that. You've handled worse, Sarah. You're my best nurse, and that's why I put you on the tough cases. My wife begged him, told him she physically couldn't be in 3 places at once. His response was, we all need things. Make it work. So she ran back to the ICU and faced the impossible choice. Save the young mother in room 4, a teenager with meningitis who was seizing in room 7, or room 12. Her best friend Lisa's mother, who was struggling to breathe. Lisa and my wife grew up together, and Lisa's mom was like a second mother to Sarah. She was supposed to have 2 or 3 more weeks left. Sarah chose to run to the teenager first. She got him stabilized, then sprinted to the young mother. She was bleeding internally, and the bleeding was severe, but she again managed to control it. But then it happened. By the time she made it to Lisa's mother's room, alarms were screaming, and Lisa's mother was barely conscious. Sarah started compressions immediately, but she knew it was too late. Sarah did CPR for 30 minutes, even though she knew after 5 that it was hopeless. She called time of death at 4:47 a.m., and the worst part wasn't even over. 2 new critical patients arrived before she could even clean room 12. She passed Lisa's mother's body being wheeled to the morgue and had to keep working. The administrator strolled through at 5 a.m. and saw her. He actually nodded approvingly and said, see, I knew you could handle it. Sarah threw up in a supply closet and then went back to her other patients, and yet it got even worse. At the 7 a.m. shift meeting, the administrator used Lisa's mother's death as a teaching moment. He stood in front of everyone and said, we lost a patient in room 7 last night. This is what happens when nurses don't prioritize properly. You need better time management skills. Sarah broke down crying right there in front of her colleagues. The administrator's response was, and this emotional response is exactly the problem. This kind of behavior affects team morale. Document everything properly and see me after your shift. He wrote Sarah up for emotional unprofessionalism. After Sarah opened up, she passed out intoxicated on the couch, and that's how I spent my day planning. I'm a former military medic. I know what it's like to make life and death decisions. I knew how Sarah felt, and for some lazy effing eye-hole to make my Sarah feel that way, I wasn't gonna let that slide. I drove to the hospital at midnight and parked in the administrator's reserved spot. I didn't sleep. I waited in the darkness until he showed up at 6 a.m. for his shift. He was furious about his parking spot, but when he stepped out, I did too. I walked right to him and told him we needed to talk about what he did to my wife. I honestly wanted to act in a way that would get me 25 to life, but I restrained myself. Instead, I told Mr. Cheeseburger Gut in front of me that the patient who died last night was Sarah's best friend's mother, that he literally forced my wife to choose between who lived and who died. He wasn't interested though. He tried to push past me, but sadly for Mr. Cheeseburger Gut, I stood firm. That's when he threatened to call security and report my wife for abandonment. He said, that old woman was dying anyway. This is part of the job. I clenched my fists and told him to say that again. Okay, he said. She was gonna die anyway. Me going around chasing for a nurse who was God knows where wasn't worth it. That's when I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I've been recording you the whole time, I said. His face went white. Full story on channel linked below.